Hello, everyone. This is Janise Wiggins with Grant Me Success, and welcome back to the Nonprofit Leaders Academy. You guys, today we are going to be blessed by this next guest expert that we have with us. Her name is Miss Leaha Crawford, and she is the owner of Crawford Management Group. And I'm going to have her share a little bit about herself. I'm just so excited that she is here because Leaha, you and I was recently a guest on your talk show, right?
Yes, you were. Yes.
Give us the name of your talk show.
So it's Let's Talk with Leaha and Rhonda. We air on KUNV Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. And we just talk to entrepreneurs, learning more about them, their stories, and then delving into the passion of why they started their businesses. We give out the location. We ask that our listeners support the businesses because what we found with entrepreneurs is we don't know how to get the word out. We have this amazing product and people just think social media, Facebook, Instagram. Well, some people aren't on Facebook. They might miss you on Instagram. You need multiple ways to hit your target audience. So we started doing the show probably about 4 years ago prior to the pandemic. And in the past year, we're on every week. Then we're also on KCEP because we're going to call you about that as well. We're on KCEP once a month doing the same thing. We'll take an entrepreneur, bring them on, and talk to a different listening audience because we find that there are two different listening audiences, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
our valley, from the time I moved here in 2004. So you're
Look, I'm
talking
gonna get
about
into that. I'm gonna get into that.
okay,
We
you'll get
probably
into that, but
jumping
that's
ahead.
I'm sorry, but the
No,
thing
but
about
look,
it is this valley
I
has changed.
I
This
wanted to
valley has changed.
share with people who are watching it or who may be listening how you and I connected and then
Oh,
how we sort of reconnected, right? So this
right.
has probably been honestly,
20,
yeah, I feel like 10 to 15 years.
actually, it was like 2005.
So, yep. So
Yeah. So
15 to 18 years, about
15 to
15
18.
years. Woo! Leaha and I have known each other for a long time, you guys, and
Yes.
we have traveled in many of the same circles, similar circles. Our
Yes.
passions are similar when it comes to nonprofit and
Yes.
financial health and well-being of individuals and communities. And so I'm just so excited to
Yes.
have you here because of that reason. And I was sharing about your talk show because that's how we recently reconnected. That
Yes.
you reached out to me, had me a guest, or we were involved in some similar business trainings and groups and circles, and you invited and reached out a hand, extended a hand, come on and be a guest on my show. So
Yes.
I want to do that and return that favor. But not only that, I think that you have something so special and integral to share with nonprofit organizations. So why don't we start? And we're going to get to that. But why don't
Okay, we're
we
gonna get
start
there.
with you sharing who is Leaha Crawford?
So Leaha Crawford is the best way to say it is I am a spiritual being having a human experience.
Mm,
I spend people don't notice a lot of because I'm an accountant, right? So you see me with the numbers, but I spend a lot of time on personal and professional development. I spend a lot of time in silence. Just being able to be okay with who I am, knowing that I've done the work to be in the rooms that I am now in. I am humbly grateful for everything that I am able to do. I am a mother of two and two different types of children. One is an artist, one is a sports fan, one is a girl, one is a boy, one is now an attorney, the other one is in middle school. So just trying to be,
wow. And all these years, I didn't know that.
yeah, no, so I
All
am.
these years.
My daughter is 28, my son is 13, and totally different, right? But just wanting to be that super mom, right? And then sometimes having to say, no, okay, you want to know what? Time out. I need to go sit somewhere in silence and really just reconnect. So I spend a lot of time just self-reflecting, journaling, because I want to give an amazing service to people, not perfect, but excellent. I've had some trials and tribulations throughout my life. I mean, part of my story, I'm waiting for something to get done, and I'm gonna share that as well. But this road that I've been on, it wasn't easy, but it was all worth it. It was worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about your personal background, perhaps like where you grew up, how you got here to Vegas, and then a
Oh,
little bit more about your work experience.
okay, let's talk about it. So I am from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I
Mm-hmm.
probably was third generation born in Philadelphia at the time. I graduated from a high school, the Philadelphia High School for Girls, Catholic school kid before then, and always was, I mean, just around people that were progressive moving forward. So the high school I graduated from, we were the 232nd class to graduate from this high school in 1988. From that, about 20 of us went on to Howard University. So I'm a Howard University grad. There, I met some amazing people because DC in the 80s, early 90s, a little bit different type of town. And I was curious. I've always been curious. So I knew the Howard students, but I wanted to get to know the locals. Met an amazing mentor who basically helped me to shape me. Well, he built me as an accountant. His brother was a partner in a CPA firm. He had a small management consulting business. His dad was an attorney. So we would just have interesting situations that we had to think through. And Jimmy Cobb and his family, been in DC for a number of years, well-known family in DC. Family started a small bank, which ended up being, one of the black banks in 1970. 1970. So I just got different types of tidbits from the law and then the accounting perspective. And then the brother was one of my professors at Howard. So it was just this amazing mix of people that I could call on in the accounting arena. I set my first company up. Like, companies weren't using QuickBooks and all that other stuff in the 90s. That was something new. So
Mm-hmm.
I was automating companies, and I learned about 3 to 4 different systems. And he saw my drive. He was like, "You really want to do this?" I was like, "I do. I like it. I love it." Had to learn how to do payroll manually and put it in the system. So I, been working with QuickBooks for now almost 30 years.
Wow. Wow.
So so real strong background. Then I went to Houston, Texas for a minute because we started a nonprofit, a drug and alcohol treatment program in Texas, and learned what it takes to really start a nonprofit, to become that multi-million-dollar nonprofit. We had the grants, we had housing, we were buying buildings, we were doing a bunch of different stuff, but I became homesick. So I ended up going back to Philly, then going back to DC. And my next stop was Chicago. And then I came to Vegas with my grandmother. So my
Wow.
grandmother and I moved out here. Um, and she lived for 2 years. She passed away. And my daughter was the reason why I stayed. My daughter was the reason why I became an entrepreneur, because I couldn't work set schedules. There wasn't all this flexible schedule stuff. I needed a more flexible schedule, to be able to pick her up, drop her off at school, pick her up from school, do some activities. And I did tax. I like tax. And I
Yeah.
was doing tax returns on tax season. That was extra money, but I always had a job. And I remember the agency I was working for here locally closing down. And I just said, "You want to know what?" I was in the bookstore with Sam Smith on D Street. And he said, I was like, "Well, maybe I'll do another nonprofit." And he heard me telling someone about how to set their business up, the documents they need to have in place, the things that they needed to do. He was like, "Why are you doing another nonprofit? Why aren't you just
Mhm.
helping a whole lot of other people do what you do?" And
That
I was
is
like,
so interesting because I'm always interested to hear and know about people's stories,
right,
right? Like, one, how you even got into the accounting sector. Sounds like you had some wonderful mentors um,
amazing
during your
mentors.
collegiate years. It was something surprising, maybe to you, that you actually had a skill and a talent and a desire to be
Well, it
in the
wasn't,
field.
no, because I like numbers. I was always good in math. I like
Mm,
numbers.
mm.
And it made sense because you think when you go to a university, there are a number of different majors and people are successful across the board. I had a family member that was a DJ, so I thought about communications, but I don't think I want to do that. That's why I'm shocked when I told them, my family, that I have this radio show. They were like, "But I thought you didn't want to be on the air." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." So there are so many different things, but accounting always made sense, even when it got more complicated and understanding and just watching someone's light go off when they get it. Like, oh
Mhm.
my God, that's what I needed to do. That's all you
Mhm.
needed to do, you
Yeah.
know?
So you were going to tell us about meeting with Sam Smith, and he
Oh, wow.
obviously gave you some input and insight
But I
into,
was still scared because
oh,
I'm like, I don't know anybody.
ah,
Because when you're in business, you need to know people or you need to have some customers to make some money. And he said, it's okay. So I went home with my daughter and I was like, well, I guess I could do this from home. Then I met with another gentleman. Oh God, I can't remember his name right now, but I met with another gentleman and he told me, he said, you go to Starbucks. You don't need an office.
okay.
Find out where all the Starbucks are around town, meet your tax clients at the Starbucks, and then bring their stuff back and then make sure, you work from home, but you don't want to bring everyone to your house. It's Al Greer, farmer's agent, Al Greer. And I was like, okay. So I mapped out, that's back when you didn't have computer calendars and stuff. So I had a black calendar appointment book and I
Yep.
had my appointment book. I knew where the Starbucks, closest to the client. I was mapping it out because I was also good with with maps and directions. And I started the business. First year, I made $9,000.
Wow.
Second year, I made 54.
Wow.
Third year, we hit six figures. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm watching building the clients. My first contract was Urban Chamber of Commerce. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my God. From there, it was 100, just 100 Academy, Urban League. I just doing different things because I understood accounting.
Yeah.
I understood because I've been groomed to do this. I had been an auditor in my past. I did some auditing for a CPA firm. So I understood that side of it. And it was just taking those skills, transferring them now into my company. I knew I didn't like auditing. I like the financial statement side and I love tax. So if you ask me what's my preference, it's tax. I
So
love it.
tell me, when you first started, was it always Crawford Management Group or did it
No,
develop? Yeah. Yeah. Tell us
no,
about that.
no. So the first company I started was all in one financial services.
Okay.
And I let that go. I was like, I can't do that. And then I started, the name of the company is actually KISS Consulting.
Okay.
And its KISS was because it was keep it simple, stupid. I was like, no, you can't call people stupid. So it was keep it seriously simple because
Oh.
I think that we make accounting more complicated than what it needs to be.
Mhm.
And if you understand the attributes of your transactions, and it's a simple thought process, and you do the same thing over and over again. And then I wanted to train people because I'm like, everyone can learn this because it's easy. And found out no, everybody has different aptitudes, different things that they like and what they don't like. But what they can understand is the financial statements once you explain it to them, especially because they want to grow their businesses. So I just had to just change my thought pattern about it, plan, do, review, kept doing it over and over again. We've been in business now for 17 years. We're
Wow.
working on our 18th year in Vegas. Yep.
That's awesome. So you've worked in the for-profit sector doing
Yes.
accounting, taxes, and bookkeeping, and then you
Yes.
definitely have that foundation of working with nonprofit organizations as well.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the differences between for-profit and nonprofit accounting, as you see it or
You
have
want to know what
experienced.
honestly, it's getting nonprofit business owners to understand, well, both business owners understand you're in here to make a profit, right? With nonprofits, they look for grants and they have to fundraise. So they're asking people to give, right? And because they believe in their mission and what they're doing.
Mhm.
For-profit business is I'm giving you a service or product. So we're exchanging hands. And I
Mhm.
have to develop how much I'm going to call, how much I want to price this product for, how much is it costing me, or if it's a service, how much is my time worth? So
Mm.
depending on what industry you're in, it's just a different conversation. If you're a person that loves children, you'll give charitable contributions. You'll give to the 501c3. If you're a person that believes in that mission, but if you don't, then you won't. So how do people get their message out there? All of the industries and businesses are different, but at the end of the day, they have to bring in some type of revenue or some type of contribution. They all have some type of expenses, no matter what they call them, and they all have the bottom line, no matter what they call it. And it
And I
goes like,
love that you call both a business, right? I mean, they
because they
both
are.
incorporate in the state in which they operate.
They
And
do.
on the nonprofit side, you have a board of directors. They may be not necessarily owners, meaning that they don't take any profit, but it has to run like a well-oiled machine and
It has
business
to.
to be profitable,
It
or else
has to.
they're going to close doors.
They're going to, it's all the same. And it's one of those things where, because even with small businesses, depending on how you're set up, if you have an S Corp, you can have a board of directors. So if you have a C Corp, you're supposed to have a board of directors, right? LLCs, not as much, right? But you have to understand your structure, because what the difference is the equity section of the balance sheet. That's the biggest difference, because in one instance, it's called your fund balance, your cumulative fund balance at the time you're there. For LLCs, is looking at the partnership, the bases, and the LLCs and S Corp, the bases in your LLC or your S Corp. And C Corps is retained earnings, how much you have to give to your stockholders. Different conversations, different terminology, same concept. We just word it differently. So in anything, you want to make sure that you're generating enough money for your operations.
That's awesome. And there are definitely tools that
Yes.
can help organizations to keep track of all of this, right? I think with all of the accounting and bookkeeping software that's available and out there now, people should not have to just be running on a pen and paper process, right?
Well, I always, but see, I encourage smaller companies start with the pen and paper.
Gotcha.
Start with the pen and paper. And the
And
reason why you want to,
what are some strategies that they can use if they're on that pen and paper system?
so I know companies that use Excel. They
Okay.
use Excel spreadsheets. So they
Okay.
go back to Excel spreadsheets, because even with a lot of the systems, we have supporting documents on Excel spreadsheets. So the first thing is get them used to the fact that, let's start with the discipline. If you have this business, you want these business expenses from this account, not from, you can't mix, you can't commingle both of them, right? So you want to make sure that with the nonprofit, especially with the nonprofit, all of your expenses are handled in this one account, right? And you want to document what you did, what was it for, what was the purpose of it. And after you document it, then put it in a system. So QuickBooks, I like QuickBooks. I've used QuickBooks for a number of years. They have some inexpensive versions. They have some more, you can do desktop or online. It's probably one of the longest running softwares. Peachtree is also good with their software packages. And I know they're the other smaller packages that people are talking about now. I don't use those as much. Most of our clients, if not all, are using QuickBooks because we
Okay.
know how to use the system.
Yep.
I've used a number of systems, from the batch post systems to the real-time systems, and that's the difference. I like both, depending on the complexity of the organization and who I'm dealing with. Batch post, I can review transactions before we post them to the general ledger. A little bit more complicated to use. Not as many people use those. Whereas real time, once you enter the transaction, it's on the financial statements. But in understanding the different types of reports, I basically can go through and look at it and say, nope, you did that one. That one should be here. That should be there. This should do this. So I get, but again, that's 30 years of experience of
So
looking at them.
yeah, a couple of things I want to point out because this is so crucial for nonprofit leaders. So number
Mhm.
one, sounds like they have some options in the beginning. If
They
they're
do.
just working on a Excel spreadsheet, that's totally fine until they're ready to upgrade to an accounting software like QuickBooks or Peachtree or some
Right.
that you like to work with.
Right.
And then the other most important thing that I heard is, especially for startups, they've got to get that bank account in the name of the
The
nonprofit
business. Oh my
organization.
God. So the thing about it is, when you set anything up, you want that because you're putting that out there. People are going to send you checks in the name of that organization. So you want those checks to be able to go into that bank account.
Mm.
You know, when you get a little savvier with it, you want to have an operating account and a payroll account. You know, and if you are really into it, you want to have a fundraising account where
Ah,
just the fundraising funds are in that account, because nonprofit accounting gets a little bit more detailed than for profit,
okay.
a lot more detailed than for profit.
Okay. Because there's different ways that you want to treat different funding. Is that the reason?
Well, not different funding, different sources of different revenue sources, right?
Okay.
So if you have contributions and they're unrestricted, okay, they can go in your general fund. But
Okay.
if you have a contribution and someone says, this contribution is for this project, you have a building fund, then those funds need to go in that building account, because that's what it's for. It's for the building. And the contribution is only restricted by the donor. So if the donor says this is for that purpose, being a good custodian of the funds, you want it used for that purpose. You don't want to use it for something else. So you want to
Awesome.
make sure that you keep good records.
Something else that I've heard from another accountant who works with nonprofit organizations is that another reason why, I mean, I think it's just good business practice to separate the personal from the business or the nonprofit. But one thing that I have heard is that if you don't do that, and something needs to be researched or investigated or looked into, that you may be opening up your personal business, your personal bank account to business scrutiny
Yes.
if they're transacting business from their personal account. You have
They
any
call
thoughts on that?
they call that piercing the corporate veil. You
Ah,
pierce the veil. It's piercing the corporate veil.
wow.
And you are mixing, and people get it. I like to use simple terms and not
Yeah,
make
give
it
it to
real
them simple,
complicated.
Leah. Give
Real
it to them
simple,
simple.
real simple, real simple.
Okay.
If it's for the business, put it in a business account. If it's not a business expense, don't use that money. Depending on the type of entity that you set up, right? So if you have we're talking about nonprofits, nonprofit world, it needs some money to start up. Those are contributions, right? And you leave that money there for
Yeah,
contributions.
yeah.
If you are getting paid for a service, because some people know I can't get paid for a service. Yes, you can. If you are providing services, you can get paid. Now
With
you
a
have to
not through a
understand.
nonprofit is what you're
Through a
saying.
nonprofit, through a
Yes.
nonprofit. Yes,
Tell
yes,
them,
you
tell
can
them.
get paid. Yes, you
Yeah.
can get paid,
Mhm.
because it's a separate entity. But when you pay yourself, you want to make sure that, number one, you're documenting how much you're getting paid. If you are an employee, that's one thing, because then you have to do all of the employee documents. That doesn't go anywhere. If you are a contractor, same thing. Certain documents go with that. So you just need to know, it's not that you can't get paid, it's making sure that when you get paid, you're doing all the necessary documents for you to get paid. You know, it's not your personal piggy bank. It's not,
Mhm.
because especially if you're getting contributions, you want to make sure that you are, whatever the purpose is of the organization, that you're using those funds for that purpose.
Yeah. And I love what you're just saying about just document it, right?
Just
Like just do
document.
it the right way. And we know that a lot of nonprofit founders do invest some of their personal money to getting the organization up and started. Would you recommend that they just do like a contract between themselves and the
It,
nonprofit organization to say, hey, this is how the nonprofit is going to pay me my money back? If it's
well,
a
it
loan.
depends.
If
Well, it
it's a
depends,
loan.
right? Oh,
Okay.
and that's the thing,
Okay.
because I know a lot of smaller nonprofits, and we give a bunch of money to the smaller nonprofits. It's a charitable contribution for me. I don't
Okay.
want the money back. You needed it for a purpose. Charitable contribution, not a problem. Again, the larger nonprofit we did back in the 90s, we had a $500,000 raise.
Woo.
We raised it.
Nice.
Charitable contributions. There were no loans.
Mhm.
There were no loans. But with that, we sent a letter back stating that this is your charitable. Thank you for your contribution. You donated X amount of dollars for this so that we could start it up, because we were doing, it was just a different type of nonprofit. Um, but saying all that to say, whatever the attributes of the transaction. So if you're saying that I am loaning the nonprofit money in order to start. You want to make sure that you have documents, meeting minutes, to say you discussed it with your board. This is going to be a loan and you want to get paid back over these terms, or I'm going to contribute X amount of dollars to this nonprofit. So that way you can make a deduction on your tax return. Whatever you do, you just want to document and you want to know the attributes of all the transactions.
Awesome. Awesome. This is good stuff. This is good stuff. Tell me a little bit about some of the important financial reports that a nonprofit may want to ensure that they have. For example, when nonprofits are at the point where they're applying for grants or they're applying for maybe credit at some point in time, they may need to have certain documentation or certain financial reports. What are some of the just key important financial reports for nonprofits to have?
Okay, so with nonprofits, like I said, the financial statements are just called something different, a little bit different. So you have your statement of activities. So your statement of activities is like your profit and loss statement, but it's for a nonprofit. And you want to make sure that you have that so you can monitor with your programs, your general and administrative, your indirect costs. You want to make sure that you have all of that on your statement of activities. Your statement of financial position, that's your balance sheet. It's your balance sheet. It's called something different. And when people are asking you for the financial statements, one factor to see if you really understand that you're dealing with a nonprofit is the name of the financial statements, right? Understanding that with those financial statements, there's also a statement of cash flow, and you have to budget. You have to have a budget. There's no way to get around it. You have to have a budget because you need to know, number one, a plan for where are your revenue sources coming from, and then how do you spend the money. What I find a lot of times is people write grants and they try to write their agency into what the grant requires instead of searching for grants that fit the mission of the agency.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's what makes it sometimes challenging. I was working in drug treatment, aid service organizations, and aid service organization, we just look for stuff that dealt with people with AIDS, HIV. So we dealt with testing, we dealt with housing services, but everything we applied for was in the AIDS arena. When I was working with drug treatment, same thing. We just applied for stuff that was in that arena. We didn't go out and recreate, we're going to go feed some children. That wasn't our mission. That wasn't our mission. Now, if we had children that were in there, because we did something very different when we did the drug treatment, we were working with mothers and children under 5. So we would look for different things. We were able to get Medicaid because a lot of them applied for Medicaid, and we were able to get food and stuff because we were able to there was a program in Medicaid at the time that would feed that population. So we wrote our program first and we understood what our program was. And then we found funding that fit the program, and it made it a lot easier.
That's so key, because what you're talking about is mission drift, right? Where people kind of drift back and forth in the wave of the grant pools to try to see like, oh, well, I see $50,000 over there. Let's try to say that we provide a program or a service, in that direction. And then you see another $100,000 over here. So all of a sudden you're doing, you're a housing agency doing public health services, and not saying that those don't ever intersect or cross. They possibly could. You just need to make sure that you're just not drifting back and forth between different funding pots or funding streams just because it's available.
Just because it's available. And you want to make sure that, especially when you talk about the larger grants, and you have to write the grant because, and I would tell, a lot of when back then, I remember, because I was young and I was like, okay, so we get more money. And they were like, no, this is what we said we were going to do. And they taught me this. This is what we said we're going to do. These are our benchmarks. This is what we need to do. We need to report. And I was like, oh, we just can't spend the money. They were like, no, the money has to be spent on this. And I learned the difference between reimbursable grants and drawdown funding, right? So,
Ooh, tell them about it. Tell
right.
them
So
about it.
you have to understand when you are applying for this grant, just to know, is it reimbursable? Is it a drawdown? And if you're drawing down, they expect you to, give a report on these funds. Every once in a while, you'll get blessed, and where there's no restrictions on the money. It's a grant that they wrote, and they're going to give you X amount of dollars. They give you all the money up front. You report at the end of the year.
And so that's a
But
drawdown, just so that people are
that's a
clear.
drawdown.
They get the money
That would
up
be
front.
they get the money up front. That's a drawdown.
Okay.
But drawdowns can be handled differently. Some people will give you all the money up front. Some people will give you monthly installments. All of that is all in your grant documentation. A lot of grants, majority of the grants are reimbursable. You have to have the money up front. So if you have people like, I want to have $1 million grant, okay, over a year's time. Okay, so do you have $100,000 to spend? Because they're going to reimburse you. They're going to reimburse you. So it's levels to this. And then that's how you have to learn how to manage your cash flow, look at your statement of activities, and be able to understand that, when grants are written for programs, make sure that you're spending that money on that program. If you have a grant that covers several programs, just make sure you have clear documentation on what is spent on a program. It's an art. It truly is an art. It
That
truly
is
is art.
awesome. Really great information. I love that you are sharing with us about the differences, because I oftentimes get new clients who come to me and they just want a grant, right? And when they want a grant, I say, okay, well, how much would you like? And everybody wants $1 million, right?
Everybody
But
wants
I'm
$1
like,
million, right? You're
have
not
you
ready for it.
ever received a grant? Has your organization ever received a grant? No. Okay, well, we're not starting at $1 million. That's first and foremost, because you have to build capacity to be able to manage grant funds. And if they don't even have a bank account, number one, right? If their board of directors is not established, or if they haven't been meeting on a regular basis, if they don't have goals for the year, if they're not clear about their programming and services that they offer, they're not ready for a $1 million grant.
They're not ready. Honestly, when you are, and I guess different terms for for-profits and nonprofits, right? So same thing you have to do with a for-profit. You have to have a business plan. You can now, I tell people, I went out there and just I did my business plan later, but I knew the business of what I was doing. So I knew that I had to do a tax return, charge a fee, get paid. I had multiple ways to get paid, different things like that. With the nonprofit, in the nonprofit world, same thing. You have to go out there, you have to do your Secretary of State. You have to get your 501c3 letter, right? Got to get your letter from the IRS. And that application is not simple. They ask you a whole lot of questions just in that 1023 application, So in answering those questions, that helps you build somewhat of your capacity. You have to get that NTE number. And that NTE number says what type of agency you are. And it can be multiple. So you do the research while you're going through the process of setting up. Then once you get the 501c3 letter from the IRS, if you don't apply for the sales and use tax exemption with the state of Nevada, again, you have the nonprofit set up. That's okay with the Secretary of State. But now with the Department of Taxation, you have to go and get that tax exemption so you don't have to pay sales tax. And even in that application, I can't tell you the number of nonprofits that I know that they have the two, they don't have that third.
Yeah. And that third is that business plan, huh?
The third is that's a Nevada Department of Taxation sales.
Oh, that they don't have the taxation. Yeah.
But in that
taxation application, they ask for a business plan. So
they do. They do.
So at some point in time, like you said, you may not have the business plan when you first incorporate. You may not have the business plan when you apply for the 501c3. But when you get to that sales tax exemption, you're gonna have to do the business plan. And they don't say what the length of the business plan has to be, so some people think that a business plan is 20, 30 pages, 40 pages long with all these different sections. Listen, I've helped some clients do a business plan that's like 2 to 4 pages, right? Let's just talk about the basic services, the way that you raise funds or the revenue streams, how you market the business, your target audience for the business. So there's many different ways that they can do the business plan. But I like what you said. All of those different application phases forces a nonprofit organization to think about their services and their structure.
It makes you think about it, but it also, I can tell you this, having the conversation here, like you got to pay the Secretary of State every year.
Oh yeah.
You got to pay them every year.
Oh,
and
yeah,
you don't want to, you got to pay them every year. So, and with the sales and use tax exemption, it's every 5 years. Not a fee, but you have to renew every 5 years. They want to make sure you have to just to refile. And what I found is you want to, because they ask for volunteer hours, the number of volunteer hours when you're talking about the business plan for the Department of Taxation. That's a good thing, because if you've been doing the business or you project, these are the events that you want to do. This is the volunteers that the stuff you need. And it's also good if you document that, have volunteers sign in, document how long the event was, how long did they stay to set up and clean up. Little things that you can do so that you can show that you are doing the work that you said you were going to do with the 501c3. So it's a whole lot of ways to get there. It's a lot of documents, and it's an easy way to do the documentation.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of paperwork.
So I was going to ask, what are some strategies that you use to help new nonprofit clients to establish just good bookkeeping habits? But it sounds like you've given us a couple. I can think about you said using maybe an Excel spreadsheet so that they can track expenses and revenue, definitely QuickBooks. But what are some other good habits for nonprofit organizations for their accounting and bookkeeping?
Keeping all your documents. Just keeping all your documents. Because the few clients, I think, because I still have a few nonprofit clients, they give all of their stuff to us and we do it. And we give them the financials because you're like, I don't want to do it. I'm just going to write you in a grant, and I'm going to give it to you. If you are that do-it-yourselfer, you want to keep the documents, and you want to be able to understand because even when you're getting reimbursements for grant funds, you have to show what you paid, what you spent the money on. They want to see a canceled check, a bank statement. And so you kind of sort of have to have the bank, because you can't give them a bank statement from with another person's name on it. They want to make sure that it's that name, the monies are on that bank statement, the money is spent, because they've gotten a lot more sophisticated now. They want to see the cancel, not even the check written, because it used to be just a check written. They want to see the cancel check.
Oh,
so
wow.
Yeah,
and
no, they're asking,
like, might they
and
need
a receipt also? They want a receipt. If there's a larger purchase, they want to see contract. They might even ask you, if it's a huge purchase, did you get 3 bids?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So you really want to know, especially when you're dealing with grant funds, where's the source of the funds, so you can understand what guidance you're following. Because if you're doing federal grants that pass through the state, there's federal guidance that you have to follow. If it's a state grant, there's state guidance you have to follow. If it's just something that's local funds, that's something different. But you want to understand, where did the money come from? What are the attributes? It goes back to, what are the attributes of this transaction? Where did this money come from? The other thing is, the best thing I can say, honestly, Janise, is no matter what type of business you're in, have a credible professional around you. I always, no matter for-profit, nonprofit, I think we talked about it in one of the sessions we were in, bail. So having a banker, having a CPA, an accountant, CPA, having an insurance agent. I thought it was investor, but they said insurance, which is also very important. Also having a lawyer, because when you are reading those grant contracts, you might want to have legal, just somebody, just a friend or somebody. Can you read this for me to make sure that I understand what I am signing? And I'm not just signing on a dotted line, because even though with all the checks and balances and things like that, people are more upfront, but you want to make sure that you know what you're signing. Because everything, you have to go through the process. You have just to know what you're signing. Also, when you're writing the grant, sometimes they allow for these indirect costs. Sometimes they don't. You need to be aware of that, so that you know what you need to do, and what you need to pay for. and the type of branch you need to look for.
That's good. So it sounds like your business helps organizations, nonprofits, and small businesses just get organized,
Yes.
understand. Sounds like there's a lot of education that's involved. So you help
Yes.
to educate your clients on compliance and just
Yes.
strategies and techniques and tools and ways that they can make sure that they're doing all of their accounting and bookkeeping in a proper way. Tell us, you mentioned payroll, your experience with payroll. Is that a service that you provide now? Is that you help organizations to run their payroll?
I do not. And you see me shaking my head no when you talk about payroll. No. Can I do it? Absolutely. Do I understand what it takes to get it done? Absolutely. Outsource it every time.
Okay.
Only because payroll, there are so many documents that come with payroll. People just, we see the W-4 or the I-9. That's just the first set. Then you got a pay schedule and, pay period ending dates, just all the stuff. Then you got your quarterly forms, then your annual forms, your state forms. It's a lot. So I send that to the professional that's
Okay.
what they do. I have my preferred, I use the payroll company because it's a local woman-owned business here. And I love the fact that Kimberly's staff takes the time to explain to you payroll, and they make sure that your taxes are paid, because a lot of businesses go out of business because of that 941 liability, that payroll tax liability. And just help them to get disciplined. When you start hiring employees, you're writing the IRS a check every payroll. That's best practices, or at least every month. Smaller payrolls, it might be annually, but they'll tell you what your tax deposit schedule is. I've had some clients that they have opted to do it on their own, and they were good at it, and they were actually able to do it. But because when they mess up, I get a phone call. Well, I got a notice from who? Then I understand it.
Yeah.
And I know how to resolve the issues, because I'm an enrolled agent as well as a CPA.
Okay.
So I know how to resolve the issues. But it's trust fund recovery penalties and all the stuff that comes with pay. Send it to the payroll. Send it to the professional. That's what they do.
And then at the end of the year, you just get that documentation from payroll and help them with their taxes.
That's all I do. I get the documentation. I foot and cross-foot the numbers back and forth from the payroll. No, that's what I do. And I make sure that my numbers match. Like, I do get the payroll reports, because when the payroll reports come in, especially when you're talking about nonprofits, with payroll, if you're running multiple grants and things like that, you want to make sure that your payroll documents for how you're paying your employees match the grant reimbursement. So this payroll company, and some of the other ones do too, they make sure that the numbers match, because the grants will reimburse the payroll taxes and everything else.
Gotcha.
But it's easier for me to send it to them. Y'all work through it. Whatever the issues are, you onboard them, teach them how to do payroll, when it has to be called in, how much money they need to have in the bank. You take on that. I'll just do the other part. But I take the report and I'll break it down. Yeah, I don't touch it.
Awesome. Staying on the topic of taxes and documentation, nonprofits don't have to file like a 1040 form that we're used to on our personal taxes. But what are the tax forms that nonprofit organizations have to file each year?
So nonprofits file the 990 series. Okay. So 990N, 990EZ, and 990. And 990N is small nonprofit. It's under 50,000. They average around 50,000. So if you go a little bit over, a little bit under, it's 50,000. You are still in business. You have to file the postcard. Okay. Every nonprofit should be filing annually. Okay. Whether or not you do or not, that's up to you. But every nonprofit should be filing annually. If you don't file for 3 years, your 501c3 status is revoked. The next one is your 990EZ, different requirements. So 250, I think it's 250 in revenue, $500,000 in assets. So if you're over that, then you have to file the 990EZ, a lot more detail, a lot more questions. They're asking you if you have 4 minutes. They're asking you where your records kept. Are you lobbying? And it's 2 or 3 pages worth of questions, a bunch of pages worth of questions. Then you get to the actual 990 form. 990s are huge.
That's the long form, kind of
That's
like
the long
okay.
form. Okay, but they're asking you a lot of questions, right? But if you're filing a 990 EZ or a 990, you have professionals helping you, because more than likely you have to have an audit, and you're dealing with an auditor, you're dealing with accountants. I know my company, I work with nonprofits when it comes time to get the audit, so that they especially smaller ones. Okay, this is my first audit. What do I do? Let's talk about it, because there are some things that you need to do and have in place when you're dealing with the auditor, because even with audits, there's levels to that, because you don't necessarily have to have an audit. Smaller nonprofits can do a compilation or a review. Larger nonprofits, because of the federal funds, they have to do an audit. But if you're doing a compilation is no assurances, but a CPA firm has to prepare it. And not any CPA, like I can't prepare a compilation review or an audit because I don't provide attest services, right? But I work with CPAs that do. And
And you
I
said
will
that you don't provide what type of services?
attest services,
Tell us.
attestation services.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so attestation services. So that what that means is, and people wonder why audits cost so much, because there's a whole lot of stuff that we are required to do on the back end. We have to register with the state to say that we are providing these services. We have to go through peer reviews every couple of years or so if we're providing a certain level of service. And in an audit, I'm giving you reasonable assurance that these financial statements are presented under whatever financial framework they're presented. So there's a lot of accounting lingo, jargon that is used for nonprofits. But when you talk about you want $1 million grant, these are the things that you have to have in order to get those $1 million grants.
Like automatically, if it's $1 million,
automatically
you're getting an audit.
You
You
get an
already
audit.
signed up for an audit. Yeah.
You signed up for an audit. You signed
Right.
up for an audit. You
Right.
signed up for an audit. You signed up for the larger nonprofits that I know, they have accounting departments, because of you have to make sure that, and those expenses, those salaries, are some of them can be expensed through certain grants. Certain grants will pay for them. So you have to make sure that with those, when you're getting that audit, when the auditor comes in, and it's, I know some people are like, oh, I'm so scared the auditor is coming. For what? Everything is above board. We did the work, and it's real clean. We can show them what we did. They're going to ask you for the 941s. They're going to ask you for all the grants. They're going to code them. All accounting transactions are written in a codification system that we have access to. So we know how to handle all transactions. So I always recommend, especially if you're growing a business, you want a CPA. You want a CPA, you want somebody that you can hold accountable as well. So if they don't do what they say they're going to do, you got some, well, hey, I signed up for this. There's some just some stuff.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
you can hold us accountable.
But there's checks and balances, basically.
It has to be. It has to be. It has to be. And most of the CPAs, especially when they're auditors, they dig, because they're reading minutes, and depending on, they're reading minutes, then they're reading minutes of the agency that funded you. I mean, they're digging because they want to make sure that the financials are presented fairly. The reason why people ask for audits, because that's the only service that actually gives an opinion. The other services don't give an opinion. Right? A compilation is no assurance. It's just saying that we did this, and these are the financial statements. And sometimes for smaller grants, funders just want to know that you had somebody else look at these numbers.
Checks and balances again.
Checks and balances. Different ways to check, because it's money at stake, and it's the public's money. So when you're talking about federal funding, where do federal funds come from? Taxpayer dollars. So there's a level of accountability, because these are public funds.
Yeah. Tell me, as a accounting professional, how do you stay up to date? it sounds like you're able to rattle this information off, right? And
Oh God. So
I'm
because
certainly not trying to keep up, but I'm wondering, how do you keep
you
up?
keep, how do I keep up? So first off, in my profession, I have to do so many continuing education units. So, and when I'm buying, when I purchased my home, I knew I had to do a Schedule A. So I have been doing Schedule A's for other people. Now it was me. So I had to look at everything, looking at the interest rate and all the things that I can deduct. I do my accounting probably, if not daily, every other day. So every other day, I go, when I get into the office, that might be the first thing I do. I will link, because my bank accounts are linked to my QuickBooks. I'll download my transactions. I'll look at the transactions. I'll classify them. I'll pull the financial statements. I'll do my budget comparison. I'll also do a 12-month look back. So I take, like now I'm doing a year look back. So I'm looking at January through December, even though December's not finished yet. And then I do a comparison the last year to see if the business is growing. And I just sit down, I look at my rent expense to make sure that it's within this range. And if it's not, I know what I need to do. I do my numbers two ways, cash and accrual. So I look at what we've billed and haven't collected, and I also look at what we've actually collected. So cash is what we've actually collected. I look at the accrual basis, what we've billed for that month that wasn't collected, just to see where we are, so I can have a conversation with our staff about, okay, we need to either collect some money or the things we need to do. I look at payroll to make sure that my payroll should be about 30% of your revenue across the board, all industries. So I look at that and I make sure that my numbers are within that range. When I started advertising, because we pay for the spots that we had on the radio, I had to budget for it to say that, okay, so we're going to do radio, and then I had to measure if it was profitable for us to continue doing radio. So when clients call in, how'd you hear about us? They'll say the radio, not a problem. We know the revenue that comes from that client can be attributed to what we're doing on the radio. I use all different types of metrics just to see, and again, learning how to do this. I just do it for my business. And I remember once somebody saying, well, you still got that small little company over there. And I was like, I kind of like small because we offer individualized attention. It's not one size fits all. It's not. And
Yeah.
when our clients come in, we treat them. You're very important to us. So
That's important. You brought up a couple of things. One, you talked about cash versus accrual. I want to make sure that, that our nonprofit leaders understand that, because just from my small understanding of nonprofit accounting, there is a way that you guys perform the accounting for nonprofits that may be different. So nonprofits maybe use more of the accrual system, because like you said, it's about what you have or have not collected, or maybe you're relying on donations. Tell us a little bit about cash versus accrual accounting.
So smaller nonprofits, now the smaller nonprofits that I deal with, depending on what they're doing, they can be on a cash basis.
Okay.
When you do your audit, you just need to tell the auditor what basis you're on.
Okay.
And because the language will say, because the language of the report can say they're using an alternative basis other than accounting.
So tell us what is cash basis.
Cash basis, let's start there. Cash basis is when I pay the bill, I expense it. When I receive the money, I put it in there as income. Okay. So that's cash. When I receive it, that's when I record it.
Okay.
Okay. My business is on a cash basis. A lot of small businesses are on a cash basis. Okay. Depending on the type of nonprofit you are, like say if you are a membership organization, you might choose, if you're a membership organization that people might or might not renew, right? So you might use the cash basis because you're constantly, your turnover rate is 30%. You just have to put notes in your financial statement that say what basis of accounting you're using. Okay. Accrual is the matching principle. A lot of nonprofits have to use the accrual basis, especially if they're grant funded. You have to use the accrual basis. So when you incur the expense, so when the electric bill comes in, not when you pay it, when it comes in, you log it in. It's due on this date. Well, I received it on this date, it's due on that date. That's when you see a lot of people stamping, I received it on this date, because they want to log, I received the bill, I entered the bill. That's what it is. And with a lot
So
of
it's kind of like
grants,
as soon as the expense is billed or invoiced.
invoice, because it matches that period. It matches it, because some people might not pay their electric bill to 2 months later. On a cash basis, I'm not expensing it to 2 months later. On an accrual basis, I'm expensing it as soon as I receive the bill. I'm entering in all the bills, right? And depending on the size of your nonprofit, smaller nonprofits, you can, if you're not getting a bunch of grants, because you also have to look in the grant to see what basis they want you to use. So you, again, reading the documentation, having that professional around you, being able to ask the questions in different forums, but yeah, cash and accrual, that's been, that was one of my hardest things I had to learn early on as an accountant.
Awesome. So I want to begin to wrap us up here a
Okay.
bit, and I want to ask you about some resources that you may have for nonprofits, some suggested learning for nonprofit organizations. Look, I know that a lot of people attend YouTube University nowadays,
YouTube University, they do.
but they could be bouncing all around. And I think that people want to be cautious also of listening to too many teachers, right?
Right.
Are there some specific resources that you can offer to nonprofits to help them in learning a little bit more about accounting and or bookkeeping?
So what we use in our office, which is somewhat costly, I normally go to like one of like Fast Forward Academy or Sequoia, places where we get our CPE training from, because they will have a course or something specifically for nonprofits. Sequoia is less than $100 a year, and they have a huge training on nonprofits, just teaching you about what we need to know what we're looking for as enrolled agents for nonprofits.
Yeah.
IRS.gov. IRS.gov
Yeah.
is probably one of the best sites. Now, they're not going to talk to you about the detail of the record keeping, that you need to do it. Google is always my friend. So whenever I have a question about a transaction, I Google it. And whenever you see UNLV offering something for nonprofits, CSN offering something for nonprofits, go and take the class, because you want to learn as much as you possibly can about your business. Accounting is just one aspect of it. You want to be aware, and everybody touches on it, but the best resource is having a relationship with that account.
Yeah.
Yep.
And finally, what key piece of advice would you give to nonprofit leaders about accounting and bookkeeping? And you may have said it already,
Just
but
do
just
it.
to kind of tie it up in a bow.
Just do it. Just do it. Just do it. Don't run from it. Just do it. Don't let it pile up. Build a schedule around it. Get it done. I do mine daily, but that's my profession. But put it on your calendar. If it's Friday morning from 8 to 10, this is when I'm going to sit down and I'm going to tackle this, and I'm going to see what all the transactions that we have. Know the financial statements. Know your financial statements. And you want to be on top of this. And you want to just know, you might not know something. Don't be scared to ask questions. Don't be scared to ask questions.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Miss Leaha Crawford of Crawford Management Group, thank you so much. There's one other little question that I have to remind myself to ask you. I see your lovely banner in the back. I see that there are some notes there, though. Can you share with us about those little notes that you have on your banner?
So one of them is the mission statement for my life, the life that I want to create, and the other one is value statements. Oh. So whenever I'm feeling down or I'm thinking, because I'm an entrepreneur, and anything, emotional intelligence is huge, and I spend a lot of time just improving my emotional intelligence. But sometimes I second guess, was I supposed to do this? Is this really going to earn me the money that I want to earn? You want to know what I'm going to stop doing? Is I'm just going to go get a job. And then I have to look back at that and say, no, keep going. that was just a challenging day. It's going to be all right. You know, the bank account might be lower than what you like, but it's going to be okay. Keep pushing. And those are the things that keep me going because sometimes it's hard, but
That's
it's always worth
important.
it.
That is so important that you keep them right there with you. They're in front of you
Hmm.
and back of you, to the side of you, just
Oh,
encasing
it is.
in this
Oh, I do.
affirmation mindset. And that is
I
so
do.
important. We
I got
start out,
books on I
oh,
got
look
books on the desk.
at
I'm
that.
telling you, I got books on the desk. I got journals on the desk.
Yes.
Everything because when I have a thought, I just start writing because I have to get it out of me and get it on paper. And like I said, I'm a spiritual being having this human experience. I'm just an accountant, you know, and I've been blessed to become a CPA. And it wasn't an easy road. That's a 30-year journey. So
Oh,
it
yeah.
wasn't,
Can you share
yeah,
about that? Congratulations.
like, thank you. Oh my God.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
Tell
you.
us
So,
about give us, just some key tidbits because we're on a roll now. Now, this is mindset. We've shifted gears on you guys. But remember,
mindset.
mindset was like
Oh, wow.
session number 2 of our nonprofit leaders academy. So this loops all in. Tell us about your journey to becoming a CPA.
So CPA, first, I was an accounting major back at Howard, worked in a CPA firm, attempted the exam or attempted to take the exam in the 90s, total debacle. Wasn't in the even right mindset to even start to study. Came to Nevada and was eligible to test in Nevada after I went and got my MBA, and that was back in 2007. My cousin, who was an attorney, you know, he helped me to put the application together in order to sit for the exam. Took the exam the first time, again in Nevada. Well, first time in Nevada, 73, 69, 63. Didn't pass any of the sections, and I put it on the back burner. Attempted again in 2016. I was like, yeah, we're going to try it again. I paid for it, didn't take it. We were sitting here during COVID. My daughter's in law school. My son-in-law is sitting here, and I'm like, I should take the CPA exam. And my son-in-law, and I don't know why I said it with him sitting there. He had a CPA on the phone who laid out for me which sections I need to take, how I need to take it, da 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 da. And I knew the course that I needed to take, but it is when I tell you a lot of work, especially now. I am 20 plus years out of school. So I'm having to relearn, right? And redo. So I started taking it. Took it again the first time, got a 43. I was like, you wanna know what?
Wait a
Not
minute.
doing this.
A lower score?
A lower score.
I don't mean
Well,
to laugh at you.
but no, my mentor, because I didn't, well, I took the tax part. The tax part, I took that part and then I took the tax part. The tax part I passed. I got a 76.
Because it's what you enjoy, but
It's
it's
what
what
I
you
enjoy,
like the
right? It's
most.
what I like the
Yeah.
most. But even then, I'm like, I get a 76. Why am I getting 90? Right? Okay. So now my clock is ticking. I got a year and a half to pass the rest of the other 3 sections. I take FAR, I get a 43. I'm sitting there and I'm like, what in the hell? What in the found a group? It was Nevada's it was National Society of Black CPAs. They had intense training for us to take the CPA exam. Join the group every Monday night from 6 to 10 from January until May. I was in a training class. I had to answer 100 questions a day and be on a Saturday. And we had Zoom. So she put us on Zoom and we had to have our cameras on to show that we were working. Took the exam again, got a 78. Now I got 2. I got 2 more to go. BEC, I start, I'm like, yeah, didn't do well the first time. And then I had auditing. Auditing was my Achilles heel. I met a woman, they were telling me about a class in Dallas, a woman named LHR. She does live classes. So I flew to Dallas a total of 6, 7, 8 times to take classes on the weekend. And when I tell you the best experience I've ever had, lo and behold, I passed BEC, but I didn't pass audit in time, so I lose regulation. That's the tax part. So I got to retake the tax part now. But I'm like, that's fine. I can pass that. Passed audit with an 82. went back, took reg, passed it with a 79. I'm done. I'm now eligible to be a CPA. So it wasn't an easy path by no means. I had an amazing nationwide support system because now passing the exam, I had to make sure that I met the requirements in the state of Nevada in order for me to get my license. The legislature met, they changed one of the requirements, and I was eligible then to get my CPA. I got
I'm
my license in
snapping for my
June of this
sister.
year.
I'm
Oh yeah,
snapping for
so when
my
I
divine nine sister.
sister, so when I tell you it was this, and it was mentors, it was people around me. I was crying, and I'm not doing this no more, and I just do tax, and I'm already an enrolled agent, which people say that that exam is complicated, and it was I had to focus, but it wasn't that CPA exam. It taught me to be slower, to be mindful, to understand a question, understand what somebody is asking you before you answer. Had to slow down, moving too fast,
Because
slow
we are
down.
smart women. So we already know what you're asking us, and we already got an answer ready. Because
Oh
we
no, oh no, oh no. What I learned was one little word in the middle of just a three-line question. Not even a real hard, a three-line question. One little word will change the answer. And two of the answers look right. So when it was training, it was changing my mindset. It was helping me to become a better accountant. It was having a respect for the financial statements and the due dates, and being able to articulate that to clients. Then understanding what really even drove me over the finish line is less than 1% of the CPAs in America are Black. Less than, I didn't say 1%, I said less than one. Less than one. Less than 1%.
So this was something you had to do.
Had to do.
You just had to do it.
Had to do.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So
Congratulations and thank
yeah,
you. We
yeah,
appreciate you
yeah. It
because
was it was a real
every
and
one of you matter.
everyone every one of us,
Everyone.
every the thing is every one of it we do. And
Because it's probably such a small group of African American CPAs in Nevada in general, right?
well, in Nevada it's even less, right? So it's
Mm.
and it might be 3%. I do believe it's one though. If I'm not mistaken, it's one. I had to Google it again. But it's such a small number, right? So I am a member of the AICPA, Nevada Society of CPAs. The membership that I'm waiting because we get acknowledged is NABA. And it was the National Association of Black Accountants. Now it's known as NABA Inc. And I am a member of that as well. And of all the recognitions, just being able to be now a CPA, and they're coming here, their conference is coming here, they recognize all the newly licensed. I might cry walking across the stage because it's done, and I did it, and it's done. It's done. Opens a lot of different doors now because now when I sit in rooms, I don't have to say, well, I don't have to say, well, no, I'm not a CPA. No, I am a CPA. Yep. And I understand. So it's different, but being humble.
Yeah.
Because what I learned is humility.
Yeah.
Humility,
Sure.
being humble, and more so being grateful. Being grateful.
Absolutely.
Because people say
Anyway,
some mean
Miss
things,
Leah,
but
that we can celebrate with you here at Grant Me Success in our Nonprofit
yes,
Leaders Academy. If you are being recognized and acknowledged in any way,
yes,
capacity, share that with us. We'd love
I
to
sure will.
participate. Congratulations. I didn't want to let you go before we talked about that because
Right.
that is such an awesome achievement.
Yes.
Listen, thank you so much for being here with us in the Nonprofit Leaders Academy. Leaders, reach out to Crawford Management Group. Do you want to share any information about how they might be
Yes.
able to get in contact with you?
Yes, you can contact our office at 702-382-5737. Again, 702-382-5737. When you talk to Jen, just let her know you heard us on Grant Me Success, and she'll get you an appointment.
And how about the website and or
So,
any social media?
no, so I'm working on it. Everything
Okay,
is up,
that's
but
all right. Just
we're
call the
almost we're
office.
working on it. I will
Call the
just
office.
contact the office, call the
And
office,
do
call the
you
office.
accept clients in Nevada as well as outside of Nevada?
Doesn't matter where they are.
Okay.
We can do because we can do it. We can work with anyone no matter where they are.
Wonderful. That's what I
Yes.
want to make sure that people know.
Yes.
You guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of our Nonprofit Leaders Academy, our guest expert edition. You guys, get in touch with Miss Leaha Crawford if you have any additional questions about nonprofit accounting and bookkeeping. And again, thank you so much, Leaha. Until next time, everybody.
Until next time, thank you.